Welcome to this live astrology report. I'm Gina. Welcome if you're new to this channel, and welcome back if you're returning. I just wanted to come live this morning to discuss a few interesting astrological events that are going on, but this solar storm that's happening right now, I wanted to discuss the astrology of that. That's the main reason that I came live today. I also want to talk about sort of other aspects that are happening in the astrology right now as well. We'll tie that in, and then I'll also leave some time for question and answers at the end. So if you're here live, please feel free to leave any questions or comments in the comments. I will check all of that at the end and get back to you. And if you're watching this later, you have the benefit of the timestamps that I've added so that you can get to the part of the video or the parts of the video that are the most interesting to you. Okay, so yeah, I just had to come on today to talk about this solar storm. It is occurring in Taurus, right? This is a chart from today. I always go ahead and relegate the charts, position the charts with Aries in the first house, because I feel like that makes it a little bit easier to imagine if you're learning astrology. Put Aries first sign in the first house. So for learning purposes, I always make it look that way. So this chart is actually from about 4 in the morning today, May 12th. And the sun is where these solar storms are occurring, right? They're coming from the sun, and the sun right now is in Taurus. And even if you don't know much about astrology, you probably know that we're in Taurus season, right? If a baby was born right now, we'd say that they were a Taurus. And it's just so interesting, the astrology of this, because we're having such an amazing we're having so many rare and exciting astrological events in Taurus that for this to be occurring at this time, I think is really interesting and unique and special. So the sun is currently at 22 degrees of Taurus, and this is where we're having this solar storm. And Uranus currently is conjunct the sun. We see Uranus here right next to the sun. Maybe I should go ahead and, for now, no. Yes, that is what I want to do. I'm just going to blow up, magnify this Taurus part of the chart. This is what we're talking about. I'm going to bring that Mercury into it too. So I'm going to get Mercury and Aries involved in my magnified part as well. Okay. So currently Uranus is conjunct, or the sun is conjunct Uranus. We always talk about how the fastest moving planet, we say the fastest moving planet first. So the sun is the one that's making that conjunction. The sun is conjuncting Uranus. So that's why we say sun conjunct Uranus instead of Uranus conjunct the sun. Anyway, what's fascinating about this is we're just on the heels of Jupiter coming into conjunction with Uranus. And that's quite a rare event, right? Uranus and Jupiter are pretty slow moving planets. Jupiter takes about 13 years, 14 years to go all the way around the chart. So by the time Jupiter goes all the way around, Uranus has moved on a little bit. So they come into conjunction with each other about every 14 years. And that just happened on April 20th at 22, 23 degrees of Taurus, right where this solar storm is occurring right now, right at that same point in the sky. And so this is activating that story. This is continuing that story. Jupiter conjunct Uranus is an opportunity. It's an opportunity that comes in suddenly and quickly, and probably is a little bit of a surprise. It signifies, so again, this happened around April 20th. It was exact around April 20th, but it was really active for, a few weeks before that and several weeks after. Let's give it 5 weeks on either side. When you look back years and years from now, you might sort of think of it even as sort of like a 2024 story. You know, this Uranus Jupiter conjunction, Jupiter Uranus conjunction, I should say, Jupiter being the faster moving planet. This Jupiter Uranus conjunction is probably the most significant piece of astrology for all of 2024. And it occurred right at the same degree point as where we're having this solar storm. Okay. So Jupiter conjunct Uranus again, opportunity, expansive opportunity, but something that comes in perhaps a little bit surprising, a little bit sudden. It has a lot to do with where it falls in your chart, right? Where is Taurus in your chart? That can be helpful. But, you know, I've noticed sometimes too that what's happening with the planets is almost more significant than the houses. So if you have a planet in Taurus that's being affected by this, or a planet in Scorpio across the way that's really, really involved, those signatures might be even more significant than the houses that it's falling in. But just for everyone, it's sometimes interesting to know how specific to get. Whatever level of astrology you're working with, it's an interesting time this weekend with this solar storm, and really throughout May with so much happening here in Taurus. It's an interesting time to be thinking about what's happened quickly that might not have been comfortable, but it was an opportunity either way. Things happening suddenly, Uranus and Taurus, can be a little bit upsetting because Taurus likes stability. Taurus is an earth sign. Taurus is perhaps the sign who likes change the least. They really like steady, routine stability. And so when Uranus comes in here, even conjunct Jupiter, which is such a positive thing, a positive opportunity, a sudden opportunity, positive, it can still be a little bit jarring and upsetting because sorry, that's better. Make the chart bigger. It can still be a little bit upsetting because Taurus just likes that stability so much. So even change for the good sometimes can feel a little bit funny. So think about what's going on for you in that way. Okay, let's see here. Let's move on to talking about some other aspects that I think are important to consider when you're thinking about the astrology of everything that's going on right now. So actually, let's go ahead and get rid of this because I'm going to talk about some other things in the chart. There we go. Okay, so Taurus really is incredibly active right now. Having Jupiter and Uranus and the sun, we just had a new moon here just a couple of days ago. The moon has moved just a couple signs away to Cancer. Cancer is sort of it's an emotional place for the moon to be. Deep emotions when we have the moon in Cancer. So that's going on right now, something worth mentioning. It's also worth mentioning that Mercury here is about to move into Taurus. So Mercury at these final degrees of Aries. Mercury has been on quite a journey lately. There's an area of our life where we've been learning new information. And I just think it's significant that this Mercury retrograde and this whole Mercury time in Aries that we're coming out of overlaps with the timeline around overlaps with the timeline around this Jupiter, this Sun-Uranus conjunction and the solar storm. Gosh, excuse me. Excuse me. I got all hung up on my words. Perhaps it was a Mercury and Aries thing. I do think that this Mercury retrograde had us all a little more tongue-tied than usual. Okay, sorry, excuse me. I think it's interesting that this Mercury retrograde throughout this last big chunk of time overlapped with the timeline around everything that's happening in Taurus. whether it was the Jupiter Uranus conjunction or now the Sun Uranus conjunction, right? That those timelines were sort of concurrent. So I think talking about this Mercury retrograde cycle for a second could be a relevant thing to discuss as well. So Mercury retrograde in Aries is wrapping up, including the shadow and just the period. I mean, we're out of the retrograde, but I think once Mercury clears Aries is really sort of the end of that story, just because there's so much else, right? With Chiron here and the nodes, we had the eclipses. So I think maybe for the last month or month and a half or 2 months, there's been some new information that you've been learning, that you've been working on, a problem you've been trying to solve, new information coming in a certain kind of way. And this can be a very internal process, right? It can be that you're learning more about yourself through some experience. It can be that you're learning more about another person or about some experience in the world. But whatever it is, it's about information. It's busy mentally. It probably involves some communication and conversation. And you might have had to have some of those conversations more than once, right? And maybe sort of a repetitive, ongoing situation, a conflict maybe that's been going on for a little while, some sort of a process around this Mercury in Aries. So it's interesting to try to potentially connect those two ideas. Has there been some new big opportunity that's come in sort of a surprising way lately that it's good to pay attention to? At the same time, you've been learning and growing and understanding something or someone or yourself a little bit differently, right? Those sort of flavors are present at the same time. I also want to mention that we have some really nice support right now from Venus and from Mars. Okay, this is a sort of a different aspect, but Venus is in Taurus and Venus is at home in Taurus, and Mars is in Aries and Mars is at home in Aries, right? Aries is ruled by Mars, Taurus is ruled by Venus. And so these planets are very happy right now where they are, and they're communicating and they're working together very well. So it's hard not to connect this with sort of our masculine and feminine sides within. Our masculine sides are sort of at their high functioning point. Our feminine sides are sort of at their high functioning point. We have access to stability in those areas in a different way than usual. So that's a great thing. And that can show up in relationships as well, for sure. So I think that's a really, really nice support to mention. We also have Pluto retrograde right now for the first time. Well, it's not for the first time, it's for the second time, but it's for the first time at this degree point. Pluto did station retrograde at 0 degrees in the summer of 23. But right now is the first time Pluto's really gotten into Aquarius, got to 2 degrees, and then stationed retrograde. And so Pluto was moving a bit slower during this last period of time and now is going backwards over degree points. So this is sort of drilling down, and this relates really to this same period as everything we're talking about with that's happening in Taurus and that's happening in Aries. That Pluto retrograde concurrently sort of gives a depth to everything. It kind of gives an intensity to everything. And you know what else? It's about something old. It hints that it's about something that maybe was old and buried and that you hadn't worked on for a long time or thought about for a long time, and that's sort of coming to the surface to be talked about, reckoned with, dealt with, healed, moved forward, progressed. So yeah, it's really interesting astrology right now at the time of this solar storm. And I feel like this solar storm is activating that degree point where we had the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, which was the most significant astrological event of 2024. So the fact that then when the sun passes over that degree point out of all the degree points, it's going through the solar storm thing, it's just kind of cool. And it feels like it's activating that story in a different way. Whenever the sun goes over a point, it kind of shines a light on that sector of the chart. It illuminates it for us to see. So if you were missing it before, what this opportunity is, now it's really making itself known. This is the opportunity that you're being presented with. You're really getting sort of a spotlight pointed right on what the opportunity is right now. And yeah, I'm trying to think if I have anything else I would like to say about that. Well, maybe just a couple other dates, a couple other things that are coming up in the very near future to consider. So as I mentioned, Mercury is wrapping up in Aries, and we'll be moving in just a few days into Taurus, and we'll come into a square with Pluto at that time. So that's really interesting. I think right now, wrapping up that Mercury and Aries story, it's like as soon as we go into Taurus, it's like, okay, now let's talk about the new thing. Or there's some sort of, there could be new information. It's a different story, you know, whatever you're working with mentally or in your communications. If there's any sort of pull or challenge there or newness coming in to be grappled with, it's about something different. It's not about the thing that you've been dealing with for the last couple months. It's like on to the next. So that's worth mentioning. On the 18th of May, Venus will come into this conjunction with Uranus. And I just think that that's significant because that's at that same degree point, right? Uranus is a fairly slow moving planet. And so by the time Venus catches up, we're still roughly at 23 degrees. We're still at 23 degrees, and they will form a conjunction at that same point. So I think that that's interesting to pay attention to. This story may have another chapter that sort of unfolds at that moment to help bring in some clarity. It may affect relationships. I like Venus coming in at the end because I think it sort of, it brings like an ease or a peace, a goodness, a comfortability, a safety, an ease and a harmony and a beauty to the story. So it's always nice when things kind of have a little Venus touch. So I like that. So that's on the 18th. And actually, at the same time, Jupiter will be conjunct, or the sun will be conjunct Jupiter. So the sun will have moved along and will be conjunct Jupiter. Venus will have moved along and be conjunct Uranus. So it's a very interesting time as well around the 18th. So I think this is really active for us this time period through the 21st, certainly through the 19th. All these things that I'm talking about today, I would say, are relevant during that period. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and you would give it a like, I would really appreciate it. It goes a long way to help the channel and circulate the video. Also, it might be interesting to check out the horoscope reports on my channel to see where Taurus is falling for you. If you know your rising sign, watch the video for your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, that's okay. Watch the one for your sun sign. The one that's most relevant for you depends sort of on where you are with what you're working with astrology. If you're working with your rising sign, you should pretty much always be watching anyone's horoscope for your rising sign. And if you're not working with astrology at that level and you know your sun sign and you're still learning a bit about your big three and all that, then just go ahead and watch the video for your sun sign, and that will be really relevant for you. But that will tell you where Taurus is falling in your chart, and that might be helpful. So definitely check out those horoscopes if you haven't already. And I also did a video a couple days ago about if Taurus season is feeling a little bit harder than expected. I think that there's been so much talk about a lot of the positive aspects that are happening right now. And May is, you know, everyone's been saying like such a positive month astrologically, and sometimes, especially if you're into astrology and you're watching a lot of that, sometimes it can be difficult if a time period like that doesn't play out for you the way maybe you'd hoped. And so I just made a quick video about that a couple days ago, another live stream. So you might want to check that out if you haven't seen it. Okay, I think that's it for today. Thank you very, very much for being here. And happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there and people who act as moms, even if you're not biologically a mom, if you are a mom to your friends, if you are a mom to your neighbors and you help others and you share that maternal, loving, caring energy with the world, then happy Mother's Day to you as well, and especially to moms. And okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm a little tongue-tied, a little out of sorts. I feel like this wasn't the best live stream in the world, but I'm going to post it anyway because the solar storm is so rare. I just had to mention something about the astrology of it. So thank you all for bearing with me. Have a great day.